Hi there, and welcome to A Song of Ice and Fire Explained. This is a video series where we explain the massive conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire. If you haven't seen our previous videos, we suggest watching those first. So let's continue on with Daenerys 2, A Game of Thrones. This chapter is 3,859 words long, and is told from the perspective of Daenerys Stormborn, the younger sister of Viserys and Rhaegar Targaryen. In this chapter, Daenerys Targaryen is married to Khal Drogo in a ceremony that lasts all day and is gifted with dragon eggs and a horse she names Silver. When night falls, Drogo takes Daenerys for a long ride before making love. This chapter introduces Daenerys' dragon dreams, which become a reoccurrence throughout all the books and seem to influence Dany's state of mind and her decisions. But are these dreams truly her own, or are they being sent to her through glass candles? While waiting for her wedding, Illyroy Mopatis explains to Dany that Drogo's Khalasar of 40,000 Dothraki warriors and their families and herds gathered outside the walls of Pentos have made the other magisters so uneasy they have doubled the city guard. The Dothraki are eating everything in sight, and Illyroy thinks it would be best to have the marriage as soon as possible. Ser Jorah Mormont has offered and been accepted into the service of Viserys, who is impatient for Drogo to help him regain his throne. Illyroy explains to him that the Khal must take his new bride to Vaes Dothrak first, and then wait until the omens are favourable for war. Viserys complains at the delay, despite Illyroy and Jorah cautioning patience. Ser Jorah, who had travelled as far east as Vaes Dothrak, nodded in agreement. "I counsel you to be patient, Your Grace. The Dothraki are true to their word, but they do things in their own time. A lesser man may beg a favour from the Khal, but must never presume to berate him." Viserys bristled. "Guard your tongue, Mormont, or I'll have it out. I am no lesser man. I am the rightful Lord of the Seven Kingdoms. The dragon does not beg." Ser Jorah lowered his eyes respectfully. Illyroy smiled enigmatically. "There are no more dragons," Dany thought, staring at her brother, though she did not dare say it aloud. That night, Dany dreamed of Viserys, chasing and beating her and saying, "You woke the dragon!" Then she turns to see a dragon in his place and stares at her. She awakes, terrified and covered in sweat. She had never been so afraid. Until the day of her wedding came at last. But after this dream, Dany learns not to be afraid and actually impresses both the Dothraki and her husband Khal Drogo, which might have been the purpose of the dragon dream. At Drogo and Daenerys' wedding feast, the ceremony begins at dawn and continues until dusk. Viserys, Illyroy and Jorah are seated below Drogo and Dany at the feast, which grates on Viserys' pride, especially when food is first served to Daenerys and Drogo before being offered to him. Daenerys, with the forced smile her brother told her she should wear, eats little since her stomach is upset. She is seated only with her new husband, and they do not even share a common language, so there is nothing for her to do. Early on in the day, she sees Dothraki men taking dancing women and mounting them in the open like animals. When two men grab the same woman, a fight to the death ensues. The survivor then takes another woman, not even the one they'd been fighting over. Illyroy has told her that a Dothraki wedding without at least 3 deaths is considered dull. By the end of the day, a dozen men have died, obviously making it an exceptional wedding. As the hours passed, the terror grew in Dany, until it was all she could do not to scream. She was afraid of the Dothraki, as if they were beasts in human skins and not true men at all. She was afraid of her brother, of what he might do if she failed him. Most of all, she was afraid of what would happen tonight under the stars. But then she reminded herself, "I am the blood of the dragon." Which is something she might have forgotten if not for the dragon dream. At sunset, Daenerys receives her bride gifts. Viserys gives her 3 handmaids that cost him nothing, picked to teach her what she needs to know. Iri, to teach her how to ride, Jiqui, to teach her the Dothraki tongue, and Dora, to teach her the arts of love. Ser Jorah, with an apology since it was all he could afford, gives her a sack of old books in the common tongue, and she thanks him with all her heart. Illaroy gives her fine silks and fabrics and 3 huge dragon eggs. One is green, one is cream-coloured, and one is black with scarlet ripples and swirls. Illaroy tells her that they have turned to stone over the years. Khal Drogo's blood riders give her the traditional 3 weapons, which she refuses with the traditional refusals and passes to her husband. Many other gifts come from the other Dothraki. Last of all, Drogo brings forward his own bride gift, a fine grey filly. Drogo easily lifts her by the waist up to the saddle. Dany does not know what to do, so Jorah tells her to take the reins and ride. She is only a fair rider, having travelled almost exclusively by other means. But as she rides, she forgets her fears and eventually sends the horse into a gallop, and even has it leap over a fire pit, which we suspect Daenerys would not have been able to do without the dragon dream reminding her of who she is, the blood of the dragon. She returns and tells Illaroy to tell her husband that he has given her the wind, and Drogo smiles. Then the sun sets, and Drogo readies his horse. When Viserys warns her to please her husband or she'll regret it, fear comes back to her. Drogo sets a fast pace, saying nothing. Daenerys tries to rid herself of her fear by remembering that she is the blood of the dragon, and the dragon is never afraid. It is full dark when they stop at a grassy place beside a small stream. Drogo swings off his horse and lifts her down from hers. She feels fragile in her wedding silks. She begins to weep, but Drogo says no and wipes her tears away. She asks questions, but all Drogo says is no. He starts softly murmuring to her, in Dothraki to soothe her. Drogo sets her down on a rock and sits facing her, then starts removing the bells from his hair, and Dany helps. Then he indicates that she should unbraid his hair, which takes a long time. Then Drogo undresses her with tenderness and caresses her until she is ready for him. After he finishes undressing her, he watches her for a while. Then he begins to touch her face and hair. It seems like hours to Daenerys before his hands go to her breasts. This makes Dany breathless, and when he sits her on his lap and asks no, she moves his hand inside her and whispers yes. And this is where Daenerys 2, A Game of Thrones ends. Now, with this video series, we'll point out all the times that dreams seem to influence the characters in A Song of Ice and Fire, from Bran and Jon's wolf dreams to Melisandre's visions, and so on. Because George dedicates an inordinate amount of time to dreams, and even though it could be argued that they are only meant to be symbolic of what the characters are feeling, we know from Marwyn in Sam 5, A Feast for Crows, that the sorcerers of the Freehold could see across mountains, seas, and deserts with each of these glass candles. They could enter a man's dreams and give him visions and speak to one another, half a world apart, seated before their candles. So Dany's dragon dream might just be a regular dream, but it would be interesting if Quaithe or someone else sent this dream to Daenerys so she could bring forth dragons into the world. However, it is also reported that glass candles don't start burning until the arrival of the Red Comet at the end of the Game of Thrones. So maybe glass candles do play a major role in facilitating the different conspiracies going on in A Song of Ice and Fire, but they don't start until the arrival of the Red Comet, in which case Dany's dream is just a dream. But in the meantime, we'll operate under the assumption that the dreams of A Game of Thrones, from Bran to Daenerys, have been sent by the secret masterminds behind the events of A Song of Ice and Fire. The side of fire wants dragons, and the side of ice, we're not sure what they want. Anyway, that's about it for Daenerys 2, A Game of Thrones. In the next video, we'll cover Eddard 2 and continue from there. In the meantime, here are some of the differences between the HBO TV show and book. Dany and Drogo's wedding scene is shown earlier in the TV series than in the book. Jorah is introduced in the scene rather than in Daenerys' first scene where she meets Khal Drogo. In the books, Daenerys' mare is not white, but grey, with a mane like silver smoke. Jorah's appearance is different. In the books, he is described as bold, stocky, hairy, and unattractive, but is strong and fit. In the series, he has short blonde hair and is leaner, and far better looking, if that wasn't obvious. In the book, Drogo treats Daenerys affectionately and sensitively. He gently caresses her, asking her no, and waiting patiently until she overcomes her fear, feels ready for the consummation, and tells him yes. In the show, Drogo does not wait for Daenerys to consent to sex, and unlike the book, Daenerys does not seem to take pleasure in it, crying while he takes her from behind. Anyway, that's it for today's episode. If you want to see more of A Song of Ice and Fire Explained, please like, share, and subscribe. Also, when you get the chance, try out Fantasy Flight's A Game of Thrones board game, digital edition.